volatile start to the day unfolded for President Donald Trump as a cascade of setbacks, both political and personal, tested the administration's stability. From the abrupt ouster of a key security official to public missteps at a high-profile event, the White House grappled with intensifying scrutiny. Simultaneously, economic indicators painted a less than rosy portrait of growth, while legal and diplomatic challenges compounded the turmoil. This report examines each development in depth, preserving the precise facts and statements as they unfolded. On the heels of mounting chaos, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz was dismissed, marking a sharp rebuke from the president. Sands. Waltz's tenure unraveled after it emerged. He had organized a signal messaging group in which classified war plans were improperly shared. The situation escalated when an Atlantic editor was inadvertently added to the encrypted chat, prompting an internal scramble to deflect responsibility. See. Sources within the administration indicate that Waltz's removal reflects deep frustration over the leak and the broader erosion of discipline among senior aides. Later that morning, the president delivered remarks at the National Day of Prayer event, where further concerns arose over his cognitive acuity. Trump mistakenly claimed to have hosted the Philadelphia Eagles yesterday, only to repeat that he had met them a few days ago on Monday. Video excerpts reveal the president slipping between past and present in ways that critics argue signify accelerating decline. In one segment, he told attendees, "He had Ohio State here, and I had yesterday the Philadelphia Eagles here." Anyway, so they took up a little more room than Gary, before triumphantly declaring, "I got very good at this." Such comments immediately drew headlines spotlighting his apparent confusion. Economic news offered scant relief. The Wall Street Journal, owned by Rupert Murdoch, led with the sobering headline, "Economy shrinks as tariffs take their toll." Meanwhile, USA Today noted on a day 101 of the administration that economy hits a snap. These reports coincided with a stark comparison. US first quarter GDP grew by merely 0.3%, trailing the Eurozone's 0.4% expansion and outpaced by economies in Italy, Germany, Austria, France, and Mexico. And France. Observers point to the president's tariff strategy as a critical factor undermining domestic output and global trade momentum. Despite mounting evidence of economic strain, President Trump maintained that tariffs are a boon. He described them as the most big, beautiful tariffs ever, insisting they will enrich the nation, reduce debt, and enable further tax cuts. Yet corporations and consumers are already adjusting. Microsoft raised prices on Xbox Series X consoles by $100 and Series S by $80, explicitly citing import levies. Even the New York Post, traditionally sympathetic, published a front-page admission. Trump admits tariffs will raise some prices and cause shortages. The disconnect between rhetoric and outcomes has fueled criticism from across the political spectrum. Internationally, China's response has been cautious. The South China Morning Post reported that Beijing is pausing substantive trade negotiations during the 90-day tariff truce, awaiting clarity on who speaks for the United States. With conflicting messages from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, Trade Representative Jameson Greer, Peter Navarro, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, and the President himself, foreign governments have grown uncertain about Washington's negotiating posture. As one Chinese official remarked, "We have no clue who we would even deal with at this point." On the domestic front, Trump warned that failure to pass his latest tax cut package would trigger a 68% tax increase on Americans, a claim experts uniformly discard as fabricated. While the administration touts lower rates for the wealthy, independent analyses show the plan would swell the federal deficit by trillions. Indeed, current spending exceeds levels under President Biden, and when tariff-induced price hikes are factored in, most households face a net tax increase rather than relief. Questions about strategy extend to the broader trade war. Treasury Secretary Bessent has publicly appealed for de-escalation, warning that US factories rely on Chinese orders booked in advance of major holidays. Yet, at the same time, the president and other advisors continue to levy fresh duties. In a recent briefing, Bessent acknowledged there is the equivalent of an embargo. Chinese factories are closing down as we speak. The mixed messaging has alienated allies and adversaries alike, leaving the administration struggling to justify its approach. Adding to the administration's troubles, an ABC News interview with Terry Moran revealed more troubling misstatements. Trump inaccurately described MES-13 tattoos on a victim's hands and mispronounced the gang's name, while also offering a perplexing interpretation of the Declaration of Independence. Dependent. When pressed on the document's significance, he opined it meant unity and love and respect, a response constitutional scholars deem fundamentally at odds with its intent to sever colonial ties to monarchy. Legal challenges have also mounted. A Trump-appointed judge from the Southern District of Texas, Judge Rodriguez, ruled that the president's invocation of the Alien Enemies Act exceeded statutory authority. The court determined the proclamation to detain certain non-citizens under the act was contrary to the plain and ordinary meaning of its provisions. One affected individual, Daniel Zacharias Matz, saw a rush deportation effort thwarted as the administration must now seek alternative legal grounds and await further briefing. With so many threads unraveling, the Trump administration finds itself beset on multiple fronts. Bam! Political allies express concern over the president's public gaffes, economic advisors warn of deeper slowdowns, and legal defeats chip away at executive power. As this evolving story continues, the Midas Dutch Network will provide up-to-the-minute analysis and in-depth reports. How? For an ad-free experience with exclusive articles, podcasts, and daily recaps from Ron Filipke, subscribe free at midasbless.com. We will keep you informed as these developments progress. Continuing the investigative narrative, the unfolding controversies within the Trump administration carry significant implications for both domestic governance and international diplomacy. In the halls of Congress, lawmakers and both sides of the aisle have expressed alarm. Key committee chairs have scheduled hearings to examine not only the misuse of secure messaging platforms within the National Security Council, but also the broader question of accountability among senior advisors. One senior Democratic aide remarked that Walz's firing underscores systemic failures in vetting and oversight, while some Republican members privately acknowledged that the episode weakens the White House's credibility on national security. Meanwhile, the president's public speaking missteps have prompted renewed calls for cognitive testing. Although the White House has dismissed these concerns as partisan attacks, medical professionals who monitor public figures note that repeated instances of confusion, such as conflating dates, misidentifying visitor groups, and misreading foundational national documents, are highly unusual for an active head of state. Polling data, collected prior to today's events, already indicated a decline in public confidence regarding the president's mental acuity. The latest gaffes are likely to exacerbate that trend, potentially influencing moderate and undecided voters in key swing states. On the economic front, business leaders are reassessing their strategies. Several multinational corporations have publicly questioned the administration's tariff deadlines, fearing abrupt policy shifts once the 90-day window expires. Trade associations report that investment planning for the second half of the fiscal year has been delayed, with capital expenditures put on hold until there is clarity. Small businesses, already grappling with higher input costs, express concern that the administration's promises of lower taxes will be eclipsed by tariff-driven inflation, reinforcing the narrative that policy rhetoric is out of sync with market realities. Internationally, US alliances face strain. European partners, having initially expressed solidarity in a united front against unfair trade practices, now worry that the US could unilaterally impose fresh duties without notice. Japan and South Korea have quietly initiated contingency talks with China and the European Union to diversify supply chains, signaling that prolonged uncertainty in US trade policy could drive realignment among traditional allies. Diplomatic cables leaked to media outlets reveal frustration among ambassadors, who find themselves defending Washington's erratic stance at crucial summits. The legal sphere remains another arena of contention. Beyond the Alien Enemies Act ruling, several civil liberties groups are preparing challenges to other executive actions, arguing that the administration has repeatedly stretched statutory authority. These lawsuits, already in preliminary stages, could reach appellate courts within months, potentially culminating in a Supreme Court review. Legal scholars warn that protracted litigation over executive overreach may diminish the administration's capacity to act swiftly on security and immigration, compounding the administration's domestic credibility crisis. With midterm elections looming, these developments are poised to shape political dynamics. The opposition is capitalizing on the administration's missteps, framing them as evidence of mismanagement and unpredictability. Meanwhile, allied factions within the president's own party are debating whether to distance themselves from controversial advisors or to double down on loyalty, a schism that could surface in candidate primaries. Grassroots activists on both sides are mobilizing, rallying around constitutional principles and democratic norms in the face of perceived instability. Ultimately, the convergence of personnel upheaval, public gaffes, economic headwinds, diplomatic unease, and legal setbacks paints a portrait of an administration at crossroads. Now, how President Trump and his core team respond, whether through strategic realignments, clearer communication channels, or policy reversals, will determine the trajectory of US governance in the months ahead. As the political, economic, and legal pressures intensify, stakeholders from Capitol Hill to international capitals will be watching closely, weighing each statement and action against the unfolding record of an administration in turmoil. The coming weeks may well decide not only the fate of key policy initiatives, but also the broader question of executive competence and cohesion.